Ranking all the Pixar movies. I love Pixar. It's my favorite animation studio. So this is going to be quite hard for me. I added an SS tier because I think it's really needed. Please keep in mind this is just my opinion. And if you have a different ranking, that's completely okay. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And let's stay respectful. The movies will be in order of release date. So let's start with Toy Story, Pixar's very first movie. If you don't know, I love the Toy Story franchise. So this is going into SS tier. Next up is A Bug's Life. This movie had some good elements, but it definitely wasn't Pixar's best movie. But I had a lot of fun with it, so I'll put it in A tier. Toy Story 2. Many movie franchises progressively get worse after each sequel, but Toy Story is an exception. I like Toy Story 2 better than the original. I liked the new characters they introduced. I have to put it in front of Toy Story. Next up is Monsters, Inc. It's not a bad movie by any means, and I enjoyed it, but I think I'm going to have to just put it in S tier. Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo was a really fun movie. I really liked the characters, the story, and overall, it was a really enjoyable movie. I think I'm going to have to put this at the bottom of SS tier, because it's not going above Toy Story. The Incredibles was a good movie. I know a lot of people really love this film, but that's just not me. I just found this just to be missing something, or it wasn't great, so I'm going to have to put it at the bottom of S tier. Cars is a film that I think is a good solo film. This was a very predictable film, but I still had fun with the characters, but the story was very simple, so it has to go in A tier. Next up is Ratatouille. I think the story was fun and somewhat emotional, and it definitely is going in S tier above The Incredibles. WALL-E is such a good film. The beginning of the film was peak. I loved the beginning, and when they introduced the humans, it was still a good film. I love the relationship between Wally and Eve and how that grows. So I'm going to have to put it above Finding Nemo, but not above Toy Story. It's another really good film. This is an emotional story with fun characters. It's one of Pixar's best movies. This is the only Pixar movie that comes close to passing Toy Story, but it doesn't. So it's going to go in SS tier right behind Toy Story, but it's very close. Toy Story 3. In my opinion, this was the last Pixar movie in the Pixar Golden Age. But some of the films after this are still really good. Toy Story 3 is my all-time favorite Pixar movie. It was a great sequel, better than the two previous Toy Story films, and overall it was great. So it's gonna have to go at the very top of SS tier. Cars 2. As I said before, Cars should have been a one-off film. I see some potential for a sequel, but this was not it. This sequel took a sharp left turn from the original, and Mater cannot carry his own film. This has to go in C tier. It was a very bad sequel, one of the worst sequels I've ever watched. Next is Brave. Brave is a film I want to like. I don't know what's about it, but I just am bored watching it, and it just falls flat. It's going in B tier. Monster University is a prequel to Monsters, Inc. The only good thing about this movie was Mike's scene at the very beginning. This film tackles something that not many movies do, and that is, it is okay to fail, and not everyone succeeds. And we see that with Mike not succeeding of being a scarer. So I'm going to have to put this in A tier, but behind Cars. Inside Out is next, and it was a very good movie. I loved seeing the creative things Pixar came up with for our brains. I like seeing emotional elements in the story, and it didn't make me cry, but it was still very good. I'll put this behind Monsters, Inc. and in front of Ratatouille. The Good Dinosaur was a boring film. It tried to be something at the beginning, but just fell flat. It was better than Brave, but it's still going in B tier. Finding Dory. Unlike Cars 2, Dory can actually hold up her own film. Nemo and Marlin weren't really needed, but I understand why they added them. I liked the new characters, and I liked how they handled the sequel. This movie is going in A tier above Cars. I really enjoyed Finding Dory. Next up is Cars 3. Why did they go back to this franchise? I thought they would never make another movie after Cars 2. But no, they went back to Cars just to make Cars 3. And I don't know if I just can't get over Cars 2, so I don't like this film. But it's gonna have to go in front of Cars 2 and still in C tier. Coco is next. Something I just realized is that Coco was Pixar's first ever musical, and they handled it so well. I loved the songs in Coco, the characters were great, the story was great, and so this is going to go in S tier above Ratatouille but behind Inside Out. Incredibles 2. It fell flat. They didn't age up the characters, which I think they should have. The villain was very boring and not good. And overall, it wasn't great. I was bored watching this film, and it was not a worthy sequel to that original. So it's gonna have to go in the top of B tier. Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 is a very hated movie, but I don't hate this movie. I liked what they did with Woody, and it didn't feel not normal. Like, it felt normal to the story. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited for the fifth one and also nervous because I want them to do the fifth one right. Back to Toy Story 4. It was really good, and I probably have some bias because I love the Toy Story franchise, but it's going at the bottom of SS tier. Onward is not as bad as people say. Yes, it wasn't great, but I didn't think it was bad. I would put it at the bottom of A tier. Soul was a movie that I could not connect with. I didn't find it to be good. The only thing I really liked was the contrast between Joe and 22. That was a little fun to see. I'm going to have to put it behind Onward and A tier. Next up is Luca. I quite enjoyed Luca. The plot wasn't crazy and over the top, but it was just what they needed. I liked seeing how Luca and Alberto had to hide that they were sea monsters, and the overall story was really good, and I quite enjoyed Luca. This has to go at the top of A tier. Turning Red is next, and this was a film I just didn't connect with. Yes, there were some moments that were fun and cute, but for me, it was mostly cringy. It's gonna have to go behind Incredibles 2, but in front of The Good Dinosaur in B tier. Lightyear. Why did they mess up this movie so bad? There was potential here. Like, what was the movie Andy watched to make him really like Buzz? But it was executed so badly. The movie was boring and forgettable. The only character I liked was Socks. It wasn't even Buzz himself. As a big Toy Story fan, this is saying something. It was a very bad movie, and sadly, I have to put it in C tier, in front of Cars 2, but behind Cars 3. Elemental was a big underdog in the box office. I liked the message that it tackled, like immigration, but it wasn't great. It was just okay. I'm gonna have to put it in A tier behind Onward and in front of Soul. And the most recent movie, Inside Out 2. I really liked this movie. I loved seeing the new characters, I loved the story, and I loved even more getting to see in the world. That was one of my favorite parts. I'm gonna have to put this at the bottom of SS tier. Just to quickly recap, in last place is Cars 2. It was not good at all. Then Lightyear. I wish this was better. Then Cars 3. Why did they even go back to this franchise? Up next is Brave and the Good Dinosaur. Both were just boring movies. Turning Red is next. Then The Incredibles 2. It was not a worthy sequel. Then Soul and Elemental. Next is Onward. Had fun characters and a fun story, but wasn't great. A Bug's Life is next. It was an enjoyable movie, but nothing too great. Next is Monsters University. It was missing the charm of the original. We have Cars up next. Then we have Finding Dory, a good sequel to Finding Nemo. Next is Luca, a very enjoyable story with fun characters. Next is Incredibles. Ratatouille is next. Up next is Coco. It had good songs and fun characters. Now we're getting into the top 10. At number 10 is Inside Out. I love getting to see inside the brain and the emotional elements of the story. Number 9, Monsters Inc. It was a well thought out movie, getting to dive into the fear of monsters being in your closet or under your bed. At number 8, Inside Out 2. I really liked the new characters and how they expanded the world even more from the first one. Number 7, Toy Story 4. Despite the amount of hate this movie gets, I really enjoyed it. I liked what they did with Woody and how they brought back Bo Peep. Number 6, Finding Nemo. It had a good story with great characters and overall was a really enjoyable movie. Now, our top 5. Number 5, WALL-E. A very well done film. Great animation, great characters, and a great story. Number 4, Up. Had emotional moments and super fun moments. The balance between both was really well done. Number 3, Toy Story. It was Pixar's very first movie. It introduced us to this amazing world. At number 2, Toy Story 2. I had a lot of fun with the new characters like Jessie and Bullseye, and the story was even better than the first one. At number 1, Pixar's best film, Toy Story 3. It had great animation. Comment down below your top 5 favorite Pixar movies. And I'm going to get started with watching all the Illumination movies to do a ranking on them too.